The blue-skinned alien pressed his long fingers against the control panel. His hands shook as he typed the message that would either save his people or doom them forever. Commander Veltar had never imagined he would face this choice. His species, the Zephirians, had lived in peace for over 10,000 years. They built cities that floated in the clouds. They created music that could heal broken hearts. They studied the stars and wrote poetry about distant worlds. Now their beautiful planet was burning. Through the window of his command center, Veltar could see the enemy ships filling the sky like angry storm clouds. The Draconian Empire had come to his world 3 months ago. At first, they demanded surrender. When the Zephirians refused, the lizard-like creatures began their attack. The Draconians were nothing like the peaceful Zephirians. They stood 8 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies. Their claws could tear through metal. Their teeth were sharp enough to bite through bone. But the worst part was their eyes. Cold yellow eyes that showed no mercy, no kindness, no hope. Veltar had tried everything to stop them. His people built defensive shields around their cities. The Draconians broke through them in hours. They created new weapons using their advanced science. The Draconians laughed and destroyed them with ease. They even tried to negotiate, offering the invaders their greatest treasures. The Draconians took the treasures and kept attacking. Now only a few Zephirian cities remained. Most of his people were dead or hiding in underground bunkers. The beautiful floating cities had crashed to the ground in flames. The crystal towers that once reached toward the stars now lay in pieces. A young Zephirian female named Lyra ran into the command center. Her blue skin was covered in dirt and her clothes were torn. "Commander," she said, breathing hard, "the Eastern District has fallen. The Draconians are moving toward the main shelter. We have maybe 6 hours before they find the children." Veltar closed his eyes. Thousands of young Zephirians were hiding in the deep caves beneath their last city. If the Draconians found them, it would be the end of everything. His species would become nothing more than a sad story told in the darkness. "Have we received any responses to our calls for help?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Lyra shook her head. 47 different species received our message. The Altarian Council said they cannot risk war with the Draconian Empire. The Centauri Federation expressed their sympathy, but claimed they lacked the military strength. The others simply ignored us. Veltar was not surprised. The Draconian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds over the past 3 centuries. They were known across the galaxy as unstoppable. Any species that tried to fight them was destroyed completely. Their ships, their planets, their people, everything was wiped out as a warning to others. But still, Veltar had hoped. His people believed that somewhere in the vast galaxy, there had to be others who valued life and peace. There had to be someone who would stand against evil when they saw it. "Commander," said another voice. An older Zephirian male entered the room. This was Mordun, their greatest scientist. "I have finished upgrading our long-range communication system. We can now send messages much farther than before." "How much farther?" Veltar asked. "To the edge of the galaxy, if needed. There might be species out there we have never contacted before. Species that do not know about Draconian power." Veltar thought about this. It was possible that somewhere in the unexplored regions of space there were people who might help. But it was also possible that any species strong enough to fight the Draconians would be just as evil. What if they called for help and summoned something worse? The ground shook beneath their feet. Through the window, Veltar could see Draconian ships firing their weapons at the last defensive walls. Each blast left craters the size of buildings. Soon there would be nothing left to protect the underground shelters. "Do it," Veltar said. "Send the message as far as you can." Mordun nodded and began working at his station. What should the message say? Veltar looked out at his dying world one more time. In the distance he could see the smoke rising from what had once been the great library, where his people kept the wisdom of ages. The beautiful gardens where children played were now fields of ash. The singing towers that filled the air with music were silent forever. "Tell them we are the Zephirians of Kepler 442b. Tell them we are a peaceful people who have never harmed anyone. Tell them that the Draconian Empire is destroying us and we cannot stop them alone. Tell them we will share our knowledge of quantum harmonics with anyone who helps us. And tell them," Veltar paused, "tell them we are dying and our children are hiding in caves waiting for monsters to find them." Mordun typed quickly. When he finished, he looked at Veltar. "The message is ready. Shall I broadcast it?" "Send it everywhere," Veltar said. To every corner of the galaxy. Someone out there has to care about what happens to innocent people. The message shot out into space at the speed of light, racing past dead worlds and burning stars. It traveled through sectors where great empires ruled and through empty regions where no life existed. It passed by planets full of creatures that had never seen the sky and worlds where ancient beings slept for thousands of years. Far away, in a small blue planet on the edge of a spiral arm, the message was received. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Colorado. It was quiet work, listening for signals from space. Most of the time, he heard nothing but cosmic background noise. Sometimes he picked up radio waves from distant stars or the afterglow of old supernovas. Tonight was different. The computer alerted him to an incoming transmission. Jake put on his headphones and listened. At first, it sounded like static. Then he heard something that made his blood run cold. It was a voice speaking in a language he did not understand, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the sound of someone begging for help. Jake ran the signal through the translation computers that Earth had developed after making contact with other species a few years ago. Slowly, words appeared on his screen. "We are dying. Please help us. We offer our knowledge in exchange for military aid. Anyone who receives this message, please respond. Our children are hiding and time is running out." Jake stared at the message for a long moment. He had been trained for this situation, but he had never expected it to happen. Someone out there needed help, and they were calling to the stars for salvation. He reached for his communication device and contacted his commanding officer. Within minutes, the message was being forwarded to military headquarters around the world. Within an hour, it reached the newly formed Terran Space Command. Unlike the 47 species that had ignored the Zephirian plea, humanity responded immediately. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was reviewing supply reports in her quarters aboard the TSC vessel New Horizon when the emergency communication came through. She read the translated message 3 times, then called her senior staff to the briefing room. "We have received a distress call from an alien species called the Zephirians," she announced to her officers. "They are being attacked by something called the Draconian Empire. According to our database, no one else has responded to their call for help." Her first officer, Commander Pete Sullivan, frowned. "Captain, we know very little about galactic politics. If no one else is helping these Zephirians, there might be a good reason." "There might be," Rodriguez agreed. "But someone is asking for help, and they specifically mentioned that children are in danger." "I did not join Terran Space Command to ignore distress calls." The room fell silent. Earth had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their ships were new and untested. Their crews had never fought in space battles. They knew almost nothing about the species that filled the galaxy, but they also knew what it meant to protect innocent people from those who would harm them. "Plot a course for Kepler 442b, Rodriguez ordered. "Signal Earth Command that we are responding to the distress call, and send a message back to the Zephirians. Tell them help is coming." In the depths of space, the reply traveled back toward the dying world. It was a simple message, but it carried with it something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. Hope was on its way, but the Zephirians had no idea what kind of help they had summoned from the darkness between the stars. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and stared at the view screen in horror. She had seen war zones before during her time in the Earth military, but nothing had prepared her for this. Hundreds of alien ships floated dead in the black space around the planet. These were not metal warships like the ones humans built. Instead, they looked like they had been grown rather than constructed. Their hulls were smooth and curved like giant seeds or flowers, but now they were cracked open, their biomatter frozen and lifeless in the vacuum of space. "My God," whispered Commander Pete Sullivan as he stood beside her. "How many ships do you think are out there?" "Computer says over 300, answered Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the communication station. "They are all dead. No power signatures, no life signs." Rodriguez felt sick to her stomach. Each of those ships had probably carried dozens of the peaceful aliens who had called for help. Families, children, scientists, artists, all of them floating in the cold darkness now. "Captain," called out Ensign Bobby Taylor from the sensor station, "I am picking up massive energy readings from the planet's surface. It looks like someone is still fighting down there." Rodriguez looked at the main view screen, which now showed the planet itself. What should have been a beautiful blue and green world was covered in dark smoke clouds. Bright flashes of light could be seen through the smoke as weapons fired back and forth. "Signal the fleet," Rodriguez ordered. "Admiral Chen needs to see this." Within minutes, Admiral Rick Chen's battleship Defiant moved alongside the New Horizon. Chen was a veteran commander who had fought in every major Earth conflict for the past 20 years. His hair was gray and his face was marked by old scars, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "Captain Rodriguez," Chen's voice came through the communication system. "What is our situation?" "It is bad, sir. We are looking at what appears to be a massacre. The alien fleet has been completely destroyed, but there is still fighting on the planet's surface." "Any sign of the enemy?" Lieutenant Foster checked her instruments. "Yes, sir. I am detecting approximately 200 large ships in orbit around the planet. They are much bigger than the destroyed alien vessels. The energy signatures suggest they have heavy weapons and strong defensive shields." Chen was quiet for a moment as he studied the tactical information. "Any response to our arrival?" "Not yet, sir. I do not think they have noticed us. We are still quite far from the planet." "Good. That gives us time to learn what we are dealing with. Foster, can you establish communication with any survivors on the planet?" Amy Foster worked at her station for several minutes, sending signals on different frequencies. Finally, she looked up with excitement. "I have something, Admiral. It is very weak, but I think I have contact with someone on the surface." "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with static, then a voice speaking in the same alien language they had heard in the original distress call. Amy quickly ran it through the translation computer. "This is Elder Morden of the Zephirian people." "Who is this? Are you more Draconians come to finish what you started?" "Tell him we are humans from Earth," Chen ordered. "Tell him we received their distress call and we have come to help." Amy translated the message and sent it. There was a long pause, then the alien voice returned, sounding shocked and hopeful. "Humans, we have never heard of your species. You came all this way to help us, but the Draconians are too powerful. 47 different species received our call for help. All of them refused to come. They said it was too dangerous." Chen smiled grimly. "Tell him that humans have a different opinion about helping people in trouble." Over the next hour, the humans learned the full story of what had happened to the Zephirians. Elder Morden explained that his people were a peaceful race who had never known war. They spent their time studying science, creating art, and exploring the mysteries of the universe. They had never hurt anyone and had no enemies. Then the Draconian Empire found them. "The Draconians are different from any species you have ever encountered," Morden warned through the communication link. "They are not just conquering us. They are harvesting us." "And what do you mean by harvesting?" asked Major Danny Torres, who had joined the bridge crew to gather intelligence about the enemy. "The Draconians discovered that Zephirian brain tissue enhances their psychic abilities. They capture our people alive and use them for experiments. The survivors are kept in breeding facilities to produce more subjects for their research." The bridge fell silent. This was not a war over territory or resources. This was one species treating another as livestock. "How many of your people are still alive?" Chen asked quietly. "Maybe 20,000 hidden in deep caves beneath our last city. The Draconians know we are there. They are just taking their time, enjoying the hunt. They like to frighten their prey before they capture it." Major Torres studied the tactical display. "Sir, if we are going to help these people, we need to move fast. The enemy ships are positioning themselves for what looks like a final assault on the planet's surface." Chen nodded. "Foster, ask Elder Morden if he can give us information about Draconian military capabilities. We need to know what we are fighting." Morden's reply was disturbing. The Draconians were not just physically powerful. They were master warriors who had conquered entire sectors of the galaxy. Their ships were armed with weapons that could crack planets. Their soldiers were 8 feet tall, covered in thick armor like scales, and armed with claws that could tear through most metals. But the worst part was their psychic abilities. Draconians could project waves of terror that paralyzed most species with fear. Many battles were won before they began because enemy soldiers simply froze in horror when the Draconians attacked. "They have never been defeated," Morden explained. "In 300 years of expansion, no force has ever successfully stood against them. That is why no one answered our call for help. Everyone knows that fighting the Draconians means death." Captain Rodriguez looked at Admiral Chen. "Sir, maybe we should request additional ships from Earth before we engage." Chen shook his head. "Those people down there do not have time for us to wait for reinforcements. Besides, we knew this was going to be dangerous when we volunteered for this mission. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Foster. I am receiving a transmission from the Draconian fleet. They have noticed our arrival. Put it on speaker. A new voice filled the bridge, speaking in a harsh, growling language that the computer translated with difficulty. Unknown vessels, you have entered Draconian territory. Identify yourselves and state your business or you will be destroyed. Chen stepped forward. This is Admiral Rick Chen of the Terran Space Command. We have come in response to a distress call from the Zephirian people. We demand that you cease your attack and withdraw from this system immediately. The response was laughter. Cold, cruel laughter that sent chills down the spines of everyone on the bridge. Humans, we have never heard of your pathetic species. You dare to demand anything from the Draconian Empire? We have conquered 47 worlds. We have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than yours. You will make amusing sport before we add your planet to our collection? I take it that means you refuse our demand? Chen asked calmly. We do not negotiate with food, the Draconian replied. Prepare to join your new friends in death. War Master Grixtal will personally oversee your destruction. The communication ended. Chen looked around at his officers, all of whom were staring at him with a mixture of fear and determination. Well, he said with a slight smile, I guess that settles the matter. All ships prepare for battle. Send a message to the Zephirians down on the planet. Tell them to hold on a little longer. The cavalry has arrived. Major Torres frowned. Sir, with respect, we are outnumbered almost 10 to 1. The enemy has superior firepower and 3 centuries of military experience. Are you sure about this? Chen's smile grew wider. Major, there is something the Draconians do not understand about humans. We did not become the dominant species on Earth by running away from bigger predators. When something threatens innocent people, we do not calculate odds. We fight. As the human fleet moved toward the planet, none of them knew that they were about to give the galaxy its first lesson in why you should never corner a species that evolved by fighting monsters in the dark. The Draconians were about to discover that sometimes, when you hunt for prey, you accidentally wake up something much worse than yourself. The first battle began when 3 Draconian patrol ships moved toward the human fleet. War Master Grixtal watched from his command vessel as the small enemy force approached his territory. The reptilian commander was amused by these unknown creatures who dared to challenge the mighty Draconian Empire. Grixtal stood nearly 9 feet tall, his dark green scales covering a body built for war. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence as he studied the primitive human ships on his view screen. These vessels looked weak compared to Draconian warships. They were made of simple metal instead of the bioorganic hulls that could heal themselves during battle. Look at them, Grixtal hissed to his second-in-command. These humans build their ships like boxes floating in space. They have no style, no elegance. This will be over quickly. Sub-Commander Vextar nodded in agreement. Shall we use the fear projection to paralyze them before we attack? Yes. Let them experience true terror before they die. It will be educational for them. The Draconian ships moved closer to the human fleet and activated their psychic weapons. Waves of pure fear rolled out through space, designed to overwhelm the minds of any living creatures in the area. This tactic had worked on every species the Draconians had ever fought. Enemy crews would become so frightened that they could not even operate their weapons. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Captain Rodriguez felt a cold shiver run down her spine as the psychic attack reached her ship. Around her, several crew members looked uncomfortable and nervous, but none of them stopped working at their stations. Captain, reported Lieutenant Foster, I am detecting some kind of energy field from the enemy ships. It seems to be targeting our minds somehow. Rodriguez frowned. She could feel something trying to push fear into her thoughts, but it was like a whisper compared to the terror she had experienced during real battles on Earth. All stations, report status. Weapons ready? Captain? Answered Lieutenant Bob Martinez from the tactical. Station. Engines at full power. Called out Ensign Taylor. All systems normal, reported Chief. Engineer Janet Wells from the engine room. Rodriguez activated her communication link to Admiral Chen. Admiral, the enemy is trying some kind of psychic attack, but it does not seem to be working very well. Chen's voice crackled back through the speakers. Same here, Captain. My crew is feeling slightly nervous, but everyone is still at their posts. Whatever these Draconians are doing, it is not very effective against humans. On the Draconian command ship, War Master Grixtal stared at his instruments in confusion. The psychic projection should have reduced the human crews to whimpering terror by now. Instead, the enemy ships continued to advance in perfect formation. "Sub-Commander," Grixtal growled, "increase the fear projection to maximum power." Vextar worked at his controls, pouring more energy into the psychic weapon. "Maximum power achieved, War Master. The humans should be completely paralyzed with terror, but the human ships kept coming." Admiral Chen studied his tactical display as the enemy vessels approached. The Draconian ships were impressive looking, with curved hulls that seemed to ripple like living skin. They were also much larger than human vessels. But size was not everything in a space battle. "All ships," Chen broadcast to his fleet, "engage at will. Show these lizards what humans do to bullies." The space battle that followed confused the Draconians more than any fight in their long history of conquest. They expected the humans to form neat battle lines and exchange fire in the traditional manner that most galactic species used. Instead, the human ships scattered in all directions like a swarm of angry insects. Captain Rodriguez ordered her ship to dive below the plane of battle while firing missiles at the nearest Draconian vessel. At the same time, the destroyer Lincoln attacked from above, and the cruiser Washington came at the enemy from the side. The Draconians found themselves surrounded and under attack from 3 directions at once. "What are they doing?" Vextar asked in shock. "This is not how space battles are supposed to work. Where are their formations? Where is their battle plan?" Grixtal watched in growing alarm as his patrol ships were torn apart by human weapons. The primitive metal ships moved in ways that seemed impossible, changing direction constantly and coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. But the real surprise came when the human boarding parties arrived. Colonel Sam Parker had been a Special Forces soldier for 15 years before joining the Space Service. He had fought in jungles, deserts, and frozen mountains all over Earth. Now he was leading a boarding party against an alien warship, but the basic principles were the same. Parker and his 12 Marines used small attack boats to reach the damaged Draconian patrol ship. They cut through the hull with laser torches and entered the enemy vessel wearing heavy combat armor. The inside of the ship was hot and humid, designed for reptilian comfort. The first Draconian soldier Parker encountered was 8 feet tall with scales thick enough to stop small arms fire. The alien warrior roared a challenge and charged forward with claws extended, expecting the human to freeze in terror like all other prey species did. Instead, Parker rolled to one side and shot the creature in the knee with an explosive round. As the Draconian fell, Parker put 3 more rounds into its head. The entire encounter took less than 5 seconds. "Contact front," Parker reported into his radio. "1 enemy down. These things are big and tough, but they are not bulletproof." The Marines moved through the ship systematically, using tactics that no galactic species had ever employed. Instead of engaging in single combat or formal duels, they worked as a team. They used smoke grenades to confuse the Draconians, then attacked from multiple directions at once. Sergeant Mike Collins discovered something important during the fighting. When he shot the Draconian squad leader first, the other aliens became confused and disorganized. They seemed to rely heavily on their commanders for direction. "Colonel," Collins reported, "I think these lizards have a pack mentality. Take out the leader and the followers do not know what to do." Parker smiled grimly inside his helmet. "Good intel, Sergeant. Pass the word to all teams. Target the biggest ones first." Within 20 minutes, the boarding party had captured the entire Draconian patrol ship. The surviving aliens were locked in their own holding cells, staring at the humans in shock and fear. Back on his command ship, War Master Grixtal could not believe what he was seeing. 3 of his patrol vessels had been destroyed or captured by a force less than half their size. The humans had not only resisted Draconian psychic attacks, they had completely ignored them. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "No species can resist our fear projection. We have used it successfully for 300 years. His science officer, a thin Draconian named Dr. Kesival, studied the readings from the battle. "War Master, I am detecting unusual brain patterns from the human prisoners we captured. Their minds seem to be naturally resistant to psychic influence." "That is impossible," Grixtal snarled. "Perhaps not, War Master. Our archives mention that some species evolve natural defenses against psychic attack if they face enough psychological stress during their development." "What kind of world did these humans come from?" Grixtal ordered his intelligence officers to analyze the captured human equipment and try to learn about their home planet. What they discovered disturbed him greatly. Earth was what galactic scientists called a death world. It was a planet where natural disasters happened regularly, where the weather could kill without warning, and where hundreds of different predators hunted the dominant species for millions of years. Humans had not evolved in peaceful gardens like most galactic races. They had grown up fighting for survival against creatures that wanted to eat them. Fear was not something that paralyzed humans. It was something that made them more dangerous. War Master Dr. Keseval reported with growing concern. I believe we have encountered something unprecedented. These humans appear to be apex predators who achieved intelligence without losing their predatory instincts. Grixtal felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. For the first time since he was a young soldier, War Master Grixtal of the Draconian Empire was afraid. On the surface of the Zephirian world, Elder Morden watched the battle in space through his telescope. He had expected the brave humans to die quickly, overwhelmed by superior draconian firepower and numbers. Instead, he was watching the impossible. The humans were winning. How are they doing this? Whispered Commander Veltar as he joined Morden at the observation post. The Draconians have never been defeated, never. Morden adjusted his telescope to get a better view of the human ships as they hunted the remaining Draconian patrol vessels. Like wolves chasing deer through a forest, I think. Morden said quietly, "We may have called for help from something far more dangerous than we realized." War Master Grixtal paced back and forth on the bridge of his command ship, his claws clicking against the metal floor. The loss of 3 patrol ships should have meant nothing to a force of 200 vessels, but those defeats had shaken his confidence in ways he did not want to admit. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered his communication officer. "Tell them we require immediate reinforcements. These humans are more dangerous than first believed." Sub-Commander Vextar looked up from his station with surprise. "War Master, surely we do not need help to deal with such a small force." Grixtal turned his cold yellow eyes toward his second-in-command. "Those humans destroyed 3 of our ships without losing a single vessel of their own. They are immune to our psychic weapons. They fight like nothing we have ever encountered before. I will not risk the entire operation because of pride." But Grixtal's message would take days to reach Draconian High Command, and weeks for reinforcements to arrive. The humans were not going to wait that long. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Wright was leading a reconnaissance mission through the ruins of a Zephirian city. His job was to gather intelligence about Draconian ground forces and find ways to help the civilians hiding in the underground shelters. Wright had been a ranger before joining the Space Marines. He knew how to move silently through hostile territory and strike without warning, but even his extensive training had not prepared him for what he found in the destroyed city. The Draconians had not simply conquered this place. They had turned it into a hunting ground. Wright could see evidence everywhere of the cruel games the reptilian soldiers played with captured Zephirians. Buildings had been damaged just enough to create hiding places, then systematically searched to flush out survivors. The aliens were not trying to end the resistance quickly. They were enjoying the hunt. "This is not military occupation," Wright reported to Admiral Chen through his encrypted radio. "This is organized cruelty. They are deliberately prolonging the suffering of these people." Chen's voice crackled back through the radio. "Can you locate the main Draconian ground base?" "Affirmative, Admiral. They have established a command center in what used to be the Zephirian government building. Heavy fortifications, about 200 soldiers, multiple defensive positions. Any sign of prisoners?" Wright adjusted his binoculars and studied the compound more carefully. What he saw made his blood boil. "Yes, sir. I can see cages set up in the central courtyard. Looks like they are holding captured Zephirians there. The conditions are terrible." That night, Wright led a rescue mission that would become legendary among both human and alien forces. Using tactics developed in the jungles of Earth, his team of 30 Marines approached the Draconian compound in complete darkness. The reptilian sentries never saw them coming. Wright and his soldiers moved through the base like ghosts, eliminating guards silently and systematically. They used night vision equipment that gave them a huge advantage over enemies who relied on natural eyesight. They coordinated their movements through hand signals and radio whispers that the Draconians could not detect. The aliens had grown overconfident after centuries of easy victories. Their security was designed to stop desperate civilians, not trained special forces soldiers who had learned to hunt dangerous predators on a death world. Sergeant Tony Blake reached the prison cages first. Inside, he found dozens of Zephirians in terrible condition. The blue-skinned aliens were thin and frightened, their clothes torn and dirty. Many had injuries that had not been treated properly. "Easy," Blake whispered to them in their translated language. "We are humans. We came to help you. Stay quiet and we will get you out of here." The rescued Zephirians stared at Blake in amazement. They had never seen a human before, but somehow this alien warrior had appeared in the middle of a heavily guarded enemy base to save them. The real shock came when the Draconians discovered what was happening. The first alarm sounded just as Wright's team was leading the prisoners toward the perimeter fence. Suddenly the compound was flooded with lights and armed reptilian soldiers came running from every direction. But instead of retreating, the humans did something that defied all military logic. They attacked. Wright divided his force into 3 groups and launched simultaneous assaults on the Draconian command center, weapons depot, and communication array. The aliens found themselves fighting enemies who seemed to appear and disappear like demons in the darkness. Captain Ellen Price had joined the mission as a psychological warfare specialist. Her job was to study how the Draconians reacted under pressure and find ways to use their own fears against them. Price discovered something important during the fighting. The Draconians were natural pack hunters, but they had become dependent on their technological advantages. When faced with enemies who used superior tactics and moved faster than expected, the reptilians became confused and made mistakes. "They are used to being the predators," Price reported to Wright during a brief pause in the battle. "When someone hunts them back, they do not know how to respond." Wright smiled grimly as he reloaded his weapon. "Then let us give them something to really worry about." The battle for the compound lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the Draconians had lost their main ground base, their commanding officers, and most of their heavy equipment. The humans had rescued 87 Zephirian prisoners and captured detailed intelligence about enemy operations. More importantly, word of the human victory spread quickly among both Draconian and Zephirian forces. The reptilian soldiers began to whisper fearfully about the strange new enemies who could appear anywhere and strike without warning. They started calling humans void walkers, creatures who seemed to emerge from empty space itself. The Zephirians had a different reaction. For the first time in months, they had hope. Commander Veltar was in the main underground shelter when Wright's team arrived with the rescued prisoners. The Zephirian leader could hardly believe what he was seeing. These humans had done something his people thought impossible. They had defeated the Draconians in direct combat and lived to tell about it. "How?" Veltar asked Lieutenant Colonel Wright. "How did you manage to penetrate their defenses? How did you fight so many enemies and survive?" Wright thought about the question for a moment before answering. "Commander, humans have been fighting monsters for a very long time. We learned that the best way to deal with bullies is to hit them harder than they expect and keep hitting until they stop moving." Dr. Janet Wells, who had come down to the planet as part of the rescue mission, was examining captured Draconian equipment when she made a disturbing discovery. The reptilians were not just harvesting Zephirian brain tissue for psychic enhancement. They were also conducting experiments to find ways to breed more efficient prey animals. "Admiral," she reported to Chen through her communication device, "these Draconians are not just conquerors. They are farmers. They treat intelligent species like livestock and study ways to make them more useful." Chen's voice was cold with anger when he replied, "Doctor, are you telling me that these creatures have turned conquest into a science?" "That appears to be the case, sir. According to their records, they have detailed files on 47 different species they have defeated. Each file includes information about the most efficient ways to capture, contain, and utilize members of that species." On his command ship, War Master Grixtal was receiving disturbing reports from all across the planet. Human forces were appearing everywhere at once, striking at Draconian positions and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. His soldiers were becoming afraid to leave their bases and morale was falling rapidly. But the worst news came from his intelligence officers. They had been studying the captured human equipment and discovered something that changed everything. "War Master," reported Dr. Keseval with barely concealed fear in his voice, "we have analyzed the human weapons and armor. These creatures did not just achieve spaceflight recently. They have been fighting wars on their home planet for thousands of years. Their entire civilization is built around the concept of organized violence." Grixtal felt his scales prickle with alarm. "What do you mean?" "Sir, every human we have encountered is a trained soldier. Their weapons are designed specifically for killing other intelligent beings. Their tactics are refined through centuries of warfare. They are not just another species that learned to fight. They are a species that was born to fight. For the first time in his long military career, War Master Grixtal began to wonder if the Draconian Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had spent 300 years hunting prey animals disguised as civilizations. Now they had encountered real predators, and the predators were hunting them back. The Draconian Death Fleet arrived at the edge of the Kepler system like a dark storm rolling across space. Over 2,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their bioorganic hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. This was the largest military force the Draconian Empire had assembled in 50 years. Supreme War Master Thakron stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel that was more like a floating city than a simple warship. He was ancient even by Draconian standards, his scales scarred from 100 battles across the galaxy. No enemy had ever survived an encounter with his death fleet. So these are the humans who have been troubling War Master Grixtal, Thakron hissed as he studied the tactical display. The human fleet looked tiny compared to his overwhelming force. 300 small metal ships against 2,000 massive biovessels. Supreme War Master, reported his tactical officer, the humans have formed a defensive screen around the planet. They appear to be waiting for us to attack. Thakron's laugh was cold and cruel. How noble of them. They will die protecting their new friends. Send a message to all ships. We will advance in traditional formation and crush these insects. But Admiral Rick Chen had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. On the bridge of his flagship Defiant, Chen studied the approaching enemy fleet through his tactical display. The Draconians were advancing in neat rows exactly as he had hoped they would. Their formation was impressive and would have been devastating against any normal opponent. Humans were not normal opponents. All ships, Chen broadcast to his fleet. Execute battle plan Mongoose. Remember, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to win. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions like seeds blown by the wind. Instead of forming battle lines to meet the enemy advance, they spread out across the entire star system. Some ships dove toward the planet's surface. Others climbed high above the plane of battle. Still others raced toward the system's outer planets and asteroid fields. Supreme War Master Thakron watched in confusion as his carefully planned formation charge met empty space. Where did they go? He demanded. They have split up, Supreme War Master, his tactical officer reported. Our sensors show human ships throughout the system, but they are no longer concentrated in one location. Then we will hunt them down one by one, Thakron declared. Divide the fleet into hunting groups. Find these humans and destroy them. This was exactly what Chen had been counting on. Captain Lisa Rodriguez commanded a group of 12 human ships that had hidden themselves in an asteroid field near the system's edge. When 50 Draconian vessels came hunting for them, they found what appeared to be easy prey trapped among the rocks. Instead, they found an ambush. The humans had turned the asteroids into weapons. Hidden charges detonated throughout the field, sending massive rocks flying into the Draconian formation. While the enemy ships tried to avoid the debris, human vessels emerged from concealment and attacked from every direction at once. Rodriguez coordinated the assault like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. Her ships moved between the asteroids with practiced skill, using the rocks for cover while firing missiles and energy beams at the confused Draconians. Target their command ships first, she ordered her captains. Take out their leaders and the rest will panic. The tactic worked perfectly. Within minutes, the Draconian hunting group was in complete disorder. Ships collided with asteroids while trying to escape human attacks. Others fired wildly in all directions, hitting their own allies as often as they hit enemies. Similar battles were happening throughout the star system. Human ships led Draconian forces into carefully prepared traps. They used the planet's moons as cover for surprise attacks. They hid in the shadow of gas giant planets and struck when enemy ships came within range. But the most devastating attack came from an unexpected direction. Colonel Danny Torres had been planning this mission for weeks. While the space battle raged overhead, he led a boarding party of 200 Marines toward the Draconian flagship itself. Using small, fast ships that were almost invisible to enemy sensors, they approached the massive biovessel from below. Torres had studied the captured Draconian ships and learned something important about their design. The bioorganic hulls were strongest on top and sides, where they expected attacks to come from. The bottom of the ships was much more vulnerable. "Remember," Torres told his Marines as they prepared to board the enemy flagship, "these Draconians are used to being the scariest thing in any fight. Show them what real monsters look like." The boarding party cut through the flagship's hull and entered the ship in 12 different locations at once. They moved through the corridors like a plague, destroying everything in their path. Draconian soldiers who had terrorized entire species for centuries found themselves facing enemies who showed no fear, no mercy, and no hesitation. Sergeant Mike Collins led one team straight toward the ship's command center. The corridors were filled with the sounds of battle as humans and Draconians fought in close combat. But the humans had advantages their enemies did not expect. Collins and his men wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any natural creature. Their weapons fired explosive rounds that could punch through Draconian scales. Most importantly, they fought as a team, covering each other and coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. The Draconians fought like individual warriors, relying on their natural strength and intimidation. Against an enemy that refused to be intimidated, their tactics fell apart. Supreme War Master Thakron was in his command center when the humans reached him. The ancient Draconian had fought in hundreds of battles, but he had never faced anything like these armored demons who moved through his ship like death itself. "Surrender," Colonel Torres demanded, as his Marines surrounded the Draconian commander. "Order your fleet to withdraw from this system immediately." Thakron looked at the humans with a mixture of rage and something he had not felt in centuries: fear. These creatures had done the impossible. They had boarded his flagship in the middle of a battle and captured him alive. "You cannot defeat the Draconian Empire," Thakron hissed. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than yours." Torres stepped closer to the alien commander. "You conquered 47 species that never learned to fight real wars. You harvested prey animals that froze in terror when you showed them your claws. We are different. What are you?" Thakron asked quietly. "We are humans," Torres replied. "We are what happens when prey animals evolve into apex predators, but never forget how to hunt." The sight of their supreme commander in human custody broke the morale of the entire Draconian fleet. Ships that had never retreated in 3 centuries of conquest began to flee the system in panic. The mighty Death Fleet scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Admiral Chen broadcast a message that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "Attention, Draconian forces. Your War Master is our prisoner. Withdraw from this system immediately and spread word throughout your empire. Humans protect those who cannot protect themselves. Any species that harms innocent people will answer to us." The surviving Draconian ships fled into faster-than-light travel, carrying with them stories that would terrify the Empire for years to come. They spoke of demons that emerged from empty space, of warriors who felt no fear, of a species that fought like the nightmares of gods. On the surface of the Zephirian world, Commander Veltar stood with Elder Morden and watched the human ships in orbit. The battle was over. His people were saved, but both aliens struggled to understand what they had witnessed. "What have we unleashed upon the galaxy?" Morden asked quietly. Veltar thought about the question for a long time before answering. "I think we have learned something terrible and wonderful. There are monsters in the universe, but sometimes the monsters fight for the right side." Within months of the battle, species across the galaxy began sending requests to Earth, not for trade or scientific exchange, but for protection. The Terran Protective Coalition was born from dozens of civilizations asking the same question the Zephirians had asked: "Will you help us?" And humanity's answer was always the same: yes. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood in the command center of the New Earth Defense Station. Another distress signal had just arrived, this time from a species called the Altarians who were being attacked by something called the Shadow Empire. Morrison looked at the message and smiled. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Someone needs help." The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. When innocent people cried out for salvation, sometimes the monsters that answered were exactly what the universe needed. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos not as explorers or traders, but as the immune system of civilization itself, and the predators of the galaxy would never sleep peacefully again.